The chandeliers glimmer like frozen rain above the grand ballroom, their light spilling over rows of laughing faces, champagne flutes, and designer gowns. Ethan Ward stood quietly near the marble pillar, one hand buried in his pocket, the other holding a half-empty glass. The music swelled, a jazz ensemble he'd personally hired, but he barely heard it. It was supposed to be his night, his company's 10th anniversary. The empire he'd built from nothing, now celebrated by hundreds of people who had once doubted him. He should have felt proud. But as he scanned the crowd, he noticed who wasn't there, and the absence hit harder than any insult could. His wife, Caroline, hadn't arrived. Again, he caught sight of his younger brother, Nathan, charming investors near the Champagne Tower. Nathan's easy grin and flawless suit reminded Ethan of every dinner table argument growing up, how Nathan always walked away adored, while Ethan was the one left proving himself. Ethan, someone called from behind him, his assistant, nervous and smiling too wide. Mrs. Ward said she's running late. Something about a wardrobe issue. A familiar ache tightened in his chest. Of course she is, Ethan muttered, handing over his glass. The applause drew him back. Nathan had stepped onto the stage, taken the mic before Ethan could. "Let's hear from man of the hour," Nathan said, his voice warm and practiced. "My brother, Ethan Ward, the reason we're all here tonight." The crowd erupted in cheers, cameras flashing. Ethan forced a smile as he joined him on stage, shaking Nathan's hand. The photographers loved it, the perfect brotherly moment. But Ethan caught the flicker of something cold behind Nathan's grin. "Your speech, brother," Nathan said smoothly, handing him the mic. Ethan cleared his throat. The lights fell hotter than usual. 10 years ago, he began. "This company started in a rented apartment with one laptop and a dream. I didn't have much, just a stubborn belief that I could make something that mattered." The audience leaned in. He glanced at the entrance again, still no sign of Caroline. "And tonight," he continued, voice steady, "I stand here not as someone who succeeded alone, but as a man who learned that betrayal can teach you just as much as loyalty." The doors opened. Caroline walked in. She was stunning. She always was. But Ethan's voice faltered when he saw Nathan's arm slip instinctively around her waist as he helped her down the stairs. The crowd didn't notice, but Ethan did. His world tilted just slightly in that moment. He finished his speech, words blending into noise. Applause followed, polite and hollow. Cameras clicked. But inside, something in him cracked, quietly, invisibly. Afterward, he found Caroline near the terrace, her smile too bright, her laugh too rehearsed. "You look beautiful," he said, his tone unreadable. She turned, startled for a second, then recovered. "Thank you. You were incredible up there." He didn't respond. His gaze drifted to Nathan, still lingering nearby, pretending to talk to investors. The night stretched on, laughter, champagne, music. Ethan stood in the crowd, surrounded yet utterly alone. And when he finally looked up again, Nathan and Caroline were gone. Later that night, back home, the silence was unbearable. The house, glass, steel in perfection, felt colder than usual. He poured himself another drink, then noticed Caroline's phone lighting up on the counter. A message flashed across the screen. From Nathan Ward. "He suspects nothing. You were amazing tonight." Ethan's hand trembled slightly, the glass slipping from his grasp and shattering against the floor. For a long time, he didn't move, just stared at the message glowing in the darkness, realizing the kind of betrayal that rewires your soul. Not from enemies, but from the ones who once said your name with love. He turned off the phone and whispered to himself, "So this is how family dies quietly." Outside, the city lights blurred against the glass. Inside, Ethan Ward made a silent promise. This ends with truth, one way or another. The morning after the gala, the world outside Ethan's penthouse looked unchanged. Same skyline, same sunlight piercing through the glass walls. But inside, everything had shifted. Caroline hummed softly in the kitchen barefoot, pouring coffee as if the world hadn't just cracked beneath them. Ethan watched her silently from the hallway. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that text message again. "He suspects nothing." "Morning," Caroline said without looking up, her tone breezy. You were quiet last night, tired from the event. Ethan nodded, forcing his voice steady. Yeah, long night. She smiled, kissed his cheek lightly, and went on making breakfast. The scent of coffee filled the air, warm, familiar, deceptive. He wanted to ask why. He wanted to scream, to demand the truth. But instead, he sat down, opened the paper, and played along. Because the man she thought was blind was now wide awake. That day, Ethan went to work early, not because he had meetings, but because he needed to think. His office sat high above the city, a corner of glass and silence. On his desk was a framed photo, Caroline and their 6-year-old daughter, Ella, laughing at the beach. He picked it up, his jaw tightening. For her, he thought. For Ella, I'll keep it together. But beneath that calm, something darker was growing. Over the next few days, Ethan became an observer in his own life. He noticed the little things. Caroline smiling at her phone too often, Nathan showing up to the office unannounced, excuses piling up like lies trying to hold their shape. He didn't confront. Not yet. Instead, he started collecting screenshots, call logs, calendar overlaps. Every piece of truth hidden behind their polished masks. One evening, he followed her car discreetly after she said she was meeting a client. It wasn't rage that guided him. It was precision. He parked across from a quiet restaurant on the edge of the city. Through the glass, he saw Caroline, laughing, her hand brushing Nathan's. The way she looked at him was unmistakable. The way she used to look at Ethan. He stayed there for an hour, unmoving. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy. His reflection in the windshield looked almost unrecognizable. A man quietly breaking but refusing to shatter. When they finally left the restaurant together, Nathan placed his coat over her shoulders. Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. For a brief moment, he considered confronting them right there. But then he exhaled, slow, deliberate. Not yet. The next few weeks passed in a blur of routine and silence. Ethan continued running his company with mechanical precision. No one noticed a shift, not even Caroline. But every evening, after putting Ella to bed, he would sit alone in his study, replaying the past, the laughter, the trust, the vows, the thousand small ways love had been replaced by betrayal. He wasn't just hurt, he was studying it. Every memory now carried evidence. Every gesture had a pattern. He met with his lawyer quietly, began transferring key assets, securing custody documents, and locking down financial accounts. It wasn't revenge yet, it was preparation. One night, as Caroline stepped out of the shower, she found him sitting by the window, staring at the rain. "You're quiet again," she said softly, wrapping a towel around herself. Did something happen at work? He turned to look at her, expression unreadable. "Just realizing," he said, "how easy it is to trust the wrong people." She frowned slightly, sensing an edge beneath his tone. "What's that supposed to mean?" He smiled faintly, stood up, and walked past her. "Nothing you need to worry about." The faint scent of her perfume lingered as he left the room, the same one she'd worn at the restaurant that night. Later that night, Ethan opened his phone and saved one last piece of proof. A photo of Nathan and Caroline entering a hotel, time-stamped and clear. He stared at it for a long moment, then placed it in a hidden folder labeled simply, Truth. He didn't send it. He didn't rage. He just whispered to himself, "When the time comes, I won't need words. The truth will speak for me." Outside, thunder rolled over the city. Inside, Ethan Ward's silence began to evolve into strategy. Ethan Ward had always believed that betrayal was like fire. If you stayed calm, you could control it. If not, it consumed you. So he chose control. Weeks turned into months, and outwardly, life looked unchanged. Ethan still walked into the office every morning with the same quiet confidence, the same crisp suits, the same polite nods. Caroline still played the perfect wife in public, all smiles and small talk. Nathan still called him brother in meetings, pretending nothing had happened. But behind the glass walls of Ward Enterprises, something subtle was shifting. Power. Ethan began restructuring departments, introducing new policies, and promoting loyal employees under the radar. On paper, it looked like growth. In truth, it was a reformation, a silent cleansing. He had learned everything. Nathan and Caroline had been siphoning company funds for months. Ethan didn't rage when he found the proof. He simply smiled, because now he had leverage. He sat in his office late one evening, the skyline burning gold through the windows. His lawyer's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "It's all ready, Ethan. The documents will transfer full control to you once they sign." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "Good," he said. "Let them think it's just another partnership agreement. I want them to sign it willingly." The next morning, Caroline arrived at the office. A rare visit. She wore a white suit, perfect as always, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. "I heard you're restructuring," she said lightly, taking a seat across from him. Ethan smiled, offering her coffee. "Just making sure things are in order." She hesitated. "You've been distant lately. Is everything okay between us?" He looked at her, really looked. The woman who had once been his anchor now felt like a stranger reading from an old script. "Of course," he said softly. "Everything's fine." When Nathan entered the room moments later, the air shifted. The same charm, the same polished smile. But this time, Ethan didn't avert his eyes. "Ethan," Nathan said, clapping his shoulder, "Caroline told me about your New Deal proposal. Congratulations." Ethan's lips curved slightly. "Actually, I wanted you both to sign off on it today. A symbolic move. Family unity." Caroline and Nathan exchanged a quick glance, guilt flickering in her eyes, but greed hiding it well. They signed without reading. Ethan's smile deepened, the kind of calm that only comes when a plan slides perfectly into place. That night, Ethan drove home early. The house was quiet. Ella was asleep, her soft breathing echoing from her room. He stood at her doorway for a long time, watching her tiny hand clutch her stuffed bunny. Innocence. Something still untouched by the ugliness of adult lies. He closed the door gently and walked into the living room, where Caroline was sipping wine, scrolling through her phone. "Did you know," he began, voice even, "that every lie has a scent? It clings. No matter how much perfume you wear, it never really goes away." She froze, her smile faltering. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" He placed a thick folder on the table, the one labeled Truth. Photos, texts, financial transfers, hotel receipts. She went pale. "You." He cut her off. "Don't. Every word you say now will only sound smaller than what you've done." For the first time in years, she couldn't meet his eyes. He took a step closer, his voice calm but sharp. "You had a choice, Caroline. You could have told me the truth. You could have stopped this. But you didn't. You and Nathan thought I was too blind, too trusting." Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan, please, it wasn't like..." He turned away. "I'm not here for excuses. I'm here to end it." He handed her another envelope. "That's a divorce. You'll find the settlement more than fair. You'll keep the house, your accounts, everything you came with. But the company, that's mine now. Completely." She opened the document with trembling hands and realized what she'd signed earlier. The partnership agreement was a transfer of all her and Nathan's company shares to Ethan. Her breath hitched. "You tricked us." He looked at her, eyes steady. "No, you taught me." Hours later, after Caroline left, Ethan sat alone on the balcony. The city stretched endlessly before him, glittering with indifference. He thought about revenge, how people always imagined it was loud, explosive. But real revenge, he learned, was silent. It was peace reclaimed. His phone buzzed, a message from Nathan. "You win. I'm done." Ethan didn't reply. He deleted it, then opened a photo of Ella sleeping, the only person left untouched by the storm. He whispered, "We start over now, kiddo. Just you and me." Months passed. Winter gave way to spring, and the city seemed softer somehow. Or maybe Ethan had simply learned to see it differently. His days now began with quiet mornings, breakfast with Ella, and long walks to the park instead of board meetings and champagne galas. He had stepped down as CEO, keeping ownership, but giving control to someone he trusted. The company had been his world once, but now his world was a 6-year-old girl who still believed her dad could fix anything. And in a way, she wasn't wrong. One evening, Ethan and Ella sat by the lake near their new home, a smaller house, but filled with warmth. The sky blushed gold as the sun sank behind the trees. "Dad," Ella said suddenly, dipping her feet into the water, "why don't we live with Mom anymore?" Ethan looked at her, the question like a quiet echo in his chest. He smiled gently. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, grown-ups stop being good for each other. But it doesn't mean they stop loving you." She nodded, thoughtful in the way children are, silent, but listening with her heart. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "You know what's funny? Even when things fall apart, they can still make room for something new." "Like what?" she asked softly. "Like peace," he said. "And peace is better than pretending." That night, after putting Ella to bed, Ethan stood by the window, watching the light shimmer over the lake. It had been months since he'd seen Caroline. Part of him thought he never would again. But fate, as always, had its own timing. A week later, Caroline showed up at his doorstep. No makeup, no performance. Just a quiet woman who looked as if life had finally humbled her. "Ethan," she said softly, "I came to say I'm sorry." He didn't answer immediately. The wind moved between them, carrying years of silence. "I know sorry doesn't fix what I broke," she continued, her voice trembling. "But I needed to tell you anyway. I lost everything that mattered. And it wasn't the money. It was you, Ella, the life I threw away." Ethan studied her for a long moment, not with anger, but with a kind of weary understanding. "You know," he said finally, "for a long time I wanted you to suffer. I thought that would make me feel whole again." She looked down. "And did it?" He shook his head. "No, because pain doesn't heal pain. It just teaches you what to protect next time." She wiped her tears, nodding. "I don't expect forgiveness." He took a breath. "You already have it. Not for you, for Ella. She deserves a mother who's trying." Her eyes widened, not in relief, but disbelief. "You let me see her?" "She needs both of us," he said simply, "even if we couldn't make it work." For a moment, she just stood there, crying quietly. Not the kind of tears that beg, but the kind that finally let go. Before leaving, she whispered, "You've changed." Ethan smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped being blind." Weeks later, Ethan watched from the porch as Caroline picked Ella up for the weekend. The laughter that followed, light and familiar, carried through the air. He sat back, sipping his coffee, letting the peace settle around him. He'd learned something most people never do. Revenge might win a battle, but forgiveness ends the war. He looked out at the garden he'd planted with Ella, small, uneven rows of tulips and daisies. They bloomed messily, imperfectly, but beautifully. Maybe life was the same way. As the sun dipped low, he whispered to himself, "Not everything lost is meant to return, but everything healed is meant to stay." And for the first time in years, Ethan Ward smiled, not the polished, camera-ready kind. A real one, the kind that comes only when the heart finally forgives what the mind cannot forget.